Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. This episode was recorded prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all of those affected during this time. Stay safe, everyone. Welcome to Music Outlook LA, the podcast which highlights the independent artist, whether they are a musician, vocalist, actor, actress, live audio or in-studio engineer, or a videographer, photographer. I'm your host, Will Kimzee. Each episode, we'll look at the gigs of the independent artists, from the venues we play to how we set up and break down, the gear we use and why we use it, and the info we hope you'll find useful as we all make our way in the entertainment industry. Music Outlook LA is brought to you by Kimzee Entertainment LLC. Go to kim-zentertainment.com to find out what they're doing for the independent artist. Kimzee Entertainment LLC. Independent entertainment done independently. My guest today is audio engineer, producer, singer, and percussionist Nick Price. I first met Nick in 2011 when he helped my wife and I record and master my first CD entitled Musiqué, not to be confused with my band, haha. And I must say he did an excellent job. He's worked with such notables like Tyrese Gibson, Jesse McCartney, who played J.R. Chandler on All My Children back in the 90s, and gospel artist Amber Bullock, who's appeared on BET's Sunday Best, just to name a few. Today, Nick continues his work as a freelance audio engineer, specializing in post-production for film and TV. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nick Price. Nick, welcome to Music Outlook LA. How you doing?
I'm good, Will. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Hey, no problem. So, tell everybody out there in podcast land who Nick Price is.
Oh, hey, podcast land. What's up, guys? So I am a bit of a specialist in a few things, from some music work, some post-production work, and some engineering. I'm in my early 30s. I've been out in LA for about 10 years. I'm from Missouri originally, and made the move to come out and work in the music business, and learned a lot of good lessons about that, and found some other opportunities in film and television, and then slowly working my way back towards becoming a musician again, a working and paid musician. And so it's been a mixed journey out here in LA, and also a great time.
Cool. So where are you currently working or performing, or previously have performed and worked?
Yeah, so I just went freelance again, and I haven't been freelance, and I'm sure this will be a great thing for us to talk about. I'm sure it comes up on the show a lot.
Yeah.
So I just went freelance again. And I had spent the last 8 years working at a post-production company that is kind of the biggest of the big. And I did a lot of jobs there, from customer service to audio mixing. And so landing back on the market as a freelancer, I'm splitting my time between focusing on building up a clientele roster again. I am working my way into the professional singer space, not from the pop and commercial side, but from the choral and the church music and the new arts scene, which has been a really cool journey.
Sounds cool. You're right up my alley, and you're talking my language when you said church music and everything. I also happen to be MD for a small Baptist church out here in Southern California, and I do everything from the musician, direct the praise team, audio and video, and I make sure that they have an internet presence. So since you and I have talked last, I was dabbling in it, and now I'm just kind of getting my hands in all sorts of things in front and behind the mic. So cool. We'll get all into that. So I did not know, one, that you were from Missouri, unless I completely forgot. What part?
I'm from right in the center of the state. The closest town, it's halfway between Kansas City and St. Louis. And there's a really big university there called the University of Missouri-Columbia. And I live in a tiny little farming community just about 20 miles away from that city.
Okay, cool. All of my cousins and aunts and so forth, my dad is from KC. So I lived out there for a number of years. Native here, but moved out there and then came back. So my eyes and ears both perked up and was like, oh, kindred spirit.
Yeah, I love Kansas City. It's a beautiful city. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Congratulations to the AFC champions, the Chiefs.
Yes, that was a very exciting win. What was that? Just a weekend ago now, right?
AFC and Super Bowl champs. I should correct myself on that. They won the whole enchilada.
They did. They did. Well, do you know how many years it's been? Like 50-something?
Exactly. 50-something years since last they had something. So even though I was kind of rooting for Frisco, even though I'm a Rams guy, I was happy that KC got the whole thing. That is so cool. So as a percussionist and singer on the performance side, where have you performed? What kind of work did you do?
So most of my performance for percussion came in when I had just gotten out to LA. And at that time, I was working my way into recording studios and trying to develop a roster for clients that I was producing music for. Mm-hmm. And so I had intensively studied percussion in high school and in college. And that was mostly classical percussion, but I also played in rock bands and jazz bands too, so I could drum. And so really that skill became kind of a producer skill where, you know, a need would come up for a djembe, or they wanted a vibraphone, or they didn't hear a drum part, and so I would do a demo track or something like that. So most of my percussion work was in the service of helping produce music for people in whatever session or whatever studio I happened to be in.
Okay.
And so that's mostly sat on the shelf after I transitioned over to post sound, film and television. And then singing has just come back in, and that's luckily something I've gotten to use throughout most of my career here in LA. Is I was also able to produce vocalists, and that's what the work I really enjoy the most is producing vocalists. And so I spent a fair amount of my time when I got out to LA helping singers develop their performances, write harmonies, improve melody leading, and things like that. Kind of intensively working on their singing.
Okay.
And now that is taking a slightly different turn where I am joining professional choruses. And so that was really nice to see when I got out to LA. The city is really the city of opportunity in so many ways.
Yeah, it is.
And so I discovered, getting out here, that churches have good budgets and music is really important. And so they're able to pay their singers a fair rate. And then we also have professional choruses in the city. There's wonderful schools here, and so that develops a lot of really talented composers who come out and they're looking for opportunities to create new music, and they need ensembles to perform it. And so that's led to the development of several new music chamber style choruses who are successful enough non-profit organizations that they're able to pay their singers. And so now I'm a member of a few of those. You're
a busy man. I love it.
Well, I think you would understand. Well, you gotta string your income together in this city to stay in your apartment. So
there you go. Yeah. You have to have, as they say, multiple streams of income, and I definitely can relate to that. So how would you describe your musical style?
So my musical style, if I get to work on a project that I truly love, that would be probably somewhere that's a fusion of some new sounds. Mm-hmm. So we're at a very exciting time in music where electronic music has kind of just taken its full swing at the commercial charts. And now we're starting to see it diffuse into some different genres. And so I really am enamored with the new sounds that are coming out of that. And so we have these artists that have wonderful like folk traditions and experiences, with a bit of alternative rock backgrounds that are starting to mash up their sounds with some of the new pop and electronic sounds that we're hearing too. So if I would name drop a little bit,
drop all you wish.
Great. That would be groups like Shade or Churches, bands like this that are kind of fusing these sounds. And so I really love getting to work on these projects because in that space you can access both acoustic sounds as well as digital sounds. Yeah. And it's really, in terms of the ceiling on creativity, there isn't any. You know, I mean, certainly a lot of these artists will stick to traditional song structures and some of the regular conventions that make a song enjoyable and easy to listen to. Yeah. But in terms of, you know, the sounds, the textures, where the music goes, it's kind of unlimited. And so that's really fun and really exciting. You know, there's a lot of potential for vocal effects to become new sounds on its own, and the digital space just, you know, allows you to just create endlessly.
It does.
Whatever you can come up with.
I know, it's amazing. I mean, for only having 12 notes in all of music, the possibilities of going in multiple directions are just endless, and I love that about music. I really, really do. So is your work exclusive to just audio engineering? I know you mentioned a few other things you're doing, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like we said, my hat rack is very full because I wear a lot of them right now, just having hit freelance. So I'm also doing some other things here in the LA community. We have a major issue with homelessness. Yeah. And so I'm spending part of my time working on nonprofit activities and development efforts in organizations addressing homelessness. Mm-hmm. So I spend a little bit of my time working on that. And then I've also gotten enough experience now and have worked with enough singers that I just started my vocal studio. Okay. So I'm recruiting students now to help them teach, and taking a slightly different approach than what would be traditional vocal education. And that's been a fun experience because I can kind of combine all of my different experiences into a tailored lesson where we focus on intensive vocal technique study, repertoire development, tone crafting. I can help them learn and prepare to record in studios. I can help them with sight reading and music theory, and then help them prepare for auditions since I've been through the audition process a fair amount. So the vocal studio is kind of a fun and new, exciting venture for me.
How long have you had that going on?
That started just at the beginning of this year, so it's brand new.
So we're going to plug that a little bit later. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check out the show notes for any information that I'll be putting in their website and that kind of thing. So make sure you check that out. We'll put that in there too. Yeah. So you were saying that it's not just audio engineering. And on a little side note, as I mentioned in the intro, I want to thank you again for the work that you did for my wife and I for our first CD back in 2011. And I'm not blowing smoke. You killed it. Nicole and I were talking, and I told her, I said, I got Nick to come on the show. And she's like, really? What has he been doing? I said, he's been freelancing. He's been doing his thing like we are, you know. And she mentioned the fact that, and I didn't even notice, because as you and I both can attest to, when we get in that zone, our peripheral kind of shuts off to some extent. But she mentioned that you had this look on your face when I was in the booth with her, cueing her when to come in and sing and everything. And I'm like, why would he be so surprised? I mean, I've worked with vocalists too. I've directed stuff. And I think you mentioned something along the lines of how glad you were that you didn't have to get in the booth and do what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, she wrote the song, so I knew it quite well. I knew where she should come in and everything else. And, I did all the music on it. And, when I gave it to you for mastering and everything, I tried to mix it as best as possible. And I was really at that time just really getting my feet, if you will, or hooks into mixing and everything else. And, here I am a few years later trying to be a podcaster. So, it's a lot of fun, I got to just say. So I just wanted to thank you publicly for your work. You guys did great. And that was way back in 2011, like I said, at this little place called Blue Road Studios. So shout out to Andrew Delucia. Hey, what's up? I'll let you know. We're giving you props. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's where we met.
So I think we have to, if you want my thoughts on that, Will, about that experience, it is, it's probably the time of the show where I vent a little bit about being an audio engineer. And we should say, so Andrew Delucia at Blue Road Studios has moved out of Clear Lake Recording, which is where Will and I were working together.
Right.
And he's down the street now. He's got his own place. But just to tell a little story about that. So Blue Road was the B room in Clear Lake.
Okay.
And Clear Lake's one of the old Burbank studios, and Andrew put together a new space in there. And it was an affordable room. It was about $50 an hour, which, if you know recording studios, is a pretty good deal.
Exactly.
And so we would get mixed clientele that would come through there. We'd get people who've never been in studios, and we'd get pros and songwriters like Will and his wife Nicole. And so, I never knew what was coming through. And so some days I'd get clients that would come in and they would not have any idea how to sing.
Oh,
and,
don't
here I am, $15 an hour engineer. And the only way the session is going to be a success and the studio owner isn't going to hear that everything was horrible was that I extract a performance from them.
Right.
And so when you guys come in, and it's such a breath of fresh air to be like, oh, look, some experienced musicians. And so often it's, so much work in that environment to produce a result. And so it was such a positive and wonderful experience working with you guys that you were, you knew what you wanted to do. You were pros. And not only that, you were lovely and friendly, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
Oh, well, you guys made it even easier for us. I mean, it had been years since I had been in a professional recording studio, but,
I would have never known.
Well, I try. I mean, we here at Kimzee Entertainment really try to pride ourselves on professionalism and friendliness and all of that good stuff and giving quality product. And we hadn't even started the company at the time. But once we got everything going, everything was, like gravy. But when we came in to do the recording, we worked many days, weeks, and months on the songs. And, she had never sang other than like around the house. And that was her mistake, because once I heard it, I was like, oh, you're singing. No, I'm not. Yeah, you're singing. We can always re-record it another time if you want, but no, you're coming in and you're singing. So we just practiced it and made sure that when we got to you guys, that we didn't take up the time. It was money, and we needed to get in, make it professional, get out, so that you guys can move on to your next client. So we wanted to come in prepared is, the bottom line. But thank you again for everything that you and Andrew did. It was a hell of a lot of fun, I gotta tell you. It really was.
For those listening at home who may be thinking about going to a recording studio or are getting ready to go for the first time, rewind, go back, listen to exactly what Will said, do exactly what he said, and you'll be all set.
There you go. There's some info for you. Be prepared before you get in, because you're paying for this. It's your dime. And if you want quality product, you have to go in ready. So on that note, let's skip to the gear. Your percussion instruments, or even your favorite drum set. Tell us the mics you like to use. just go nuts on it.
You betcha. So, coming up through engineering and music at the same time as first a student in college studying this, and then a young professional, and then, a little later into further along in my career, my thoughts about gear have always changed. And when you're young, there's so many tools that you need and you don't have it. And it's hard to practice your craft. Either, if you're a musician playing multiple instruments, or if you're an engineer. And so there's a lot of temptation when you first get into this to buy a lot of things. And you really think that will lead to business, and that will lead to new productivity or creativity. Uh-huh. And I've always tried to do my best to resist that temptation and be really realistic about how much I needed and when I needed it. To know that the art and the skill and the craft would come first before my gear. And don't get me wrong, I love gear.
Who doesn't love gear?
Yeah, who doesn't? I mean, I love toys. Yeah,
there you go.
Who doesn't want a new toy?
Bright lights, bells, whistles. You gotta love it.
You got it. And they're so fun. And so, sometimes I'd make some impulse purchases and I'd bring them home, and then they'd sit there because I didn't have a plan for them. And that would really hurt. That'd be really sad. So I was always very methodical about collecting equipment as the need came up. And I would make the investment when the money was there, when the job showed up. And that way I've always been very economical. I've always been very satisfied with everything that I've owned. And so I've been able to keep just enough things that I need to do my job well, and have been really happy with how I've been able to, get just the right amount of equipment. So what I'm rocking at home, and I have a space where I live that I can do most of my work out of. So working with singers, I've got a Yamaha digital piano. So I'm doing my coaching there. And then for my engineering work, when I'm working with singers, I have the Slate VMS system. And I might have to explain this one because I bet most people don't know about this one.
Right.
Stephen Slate is he started as a software designer and was very successful with some products that he invented. And then his company moved into building hardware. And he works very hard to make his gear high end and very professional, but at affordable rates for kind of your average working engineer.
Right.
And so they created a microphone that's ultra linear in its frequency response, and then it has a matched preamplifier that's ultra linear. So the microphone is flat as possible. And then what they do is they give you a piece of software that then has the modeling curves for all of the famous microphones, all the vintage classic microphones. So what you can do is record with this thing, and it sounds beautiful by itself. And then you can apply an analog model to it to make it sound like a microphone that's maybe 10 or 20 times the cost. And so that gets me a lot in terms of picking sounds and colors for singers. And that's going into a PreSonus 192. I've been really happy with the quality of the clocking and converting on the PreSonus units. And you get a lot of bang for your buck. And I also like they're a little cold on their output. I kind of like it. Kind of suits me.
Right.
So I like the PreSonus for my converter. And then I have a pair of Atom S77Xs. They're a 3-way monitor, and they produce so much low end. It's amazing. They're only about a 1.5 feet wide and about 10 inches tall, and it produces it low end like a large 15-inch or 18-inch subwoofer would. So they're really great. They have a lot of extended frequency response, and so I can do most of my music work with a microphone, my converter, and a great pair of speakers. And then I have a lot of the kind of standard software, some Waves stuff, FabFilter, Sound Toys. I like the universal audio plugins, but they're really expensive. So I buy those a little bit at a time as they're needed. There's some cheaper alternatives out there that do the job. And then on the post-production side, I have a 7.1 setup in my home. Dolby Atmos is something that's on its way. That's probably not something that gets talked a lot about on this podcast, is the future of home surround sound. But Dolby Atmos is not quite here yet. And so most people are still listening to 7.1 or 5.1 in their living rooms.
Uh-huh.
And so I just have a 7.1 setup so I can do a 7.1 mix for a TV show or films, things like that. And that's also running through my PreSonus. And I have a matched pair of JBL monitors.
Okay. So for those who don't know, what is a 7.1 setup?
Yeah. So 7.1 is a bit of a consumer marketing term. It's I'm sure we've all heard 5.1 and 7.1 a lot. And what that means is it is a surround format. So the idea is to allow you to sit in the center and have an immersive audio experience. So it becomes a more rich multimedia experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the specifics of a 7.1 setup are that you have one speaker directly in front of you called the center channel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where most of the dialogue comes from, since it's usually right under the monitor or the screen. So it looks like the talking is coming straight from the screen. Then you have a left and a right in front of you. You have a left side and a right side that would be directly beside you. And then you have a left and right surround that'll be behind you. And if you count that up, that's 7 speakers.
Exactly.
So we just have to account for the 0.1. And this is where the marketing kind of came in. And so 0.1 refers to the subwoofer. So if you think about the total frequency spectrum that a subwoofer produces, it's about a tenth of the range that a speaker of human hearing. Mm-hmm. And so that would be 0.1. So they call the subwoofer the 0.1. So you get 7.1.
Cool. I was looking for just a set of computer speakers for the desktop, and I went into a Walmart, and I happened to see this nice little setup under $30. And when I saw who made it, my teeth fell out of my mouth.
Who was it?
It's Alltech Lansing.
Yeah, they're still around.
I was like, I thought they died. But they have always, to me, made some of the best product out there. And I picked up a couple of those speakers, maybe about 3 inches, if that.
Yeah. And
it's got a little 4-inch subwoofer encased in a box. And so I bought 2 of them. One is on the computer, and the other one I connected to the TV. And my brother-in-law, who is quite the audiophile, we were watching a movie over Christmas break or something, and I turned it on, and I think it was one of the Avenger movies or something or other. And when the orchestra kicked in on one of the scenes, and you hear the low rumble, he looks around and he's like, where is that? And I showed him, and he's like, but it's so small. It's like, yeah, you don't need ginormous, clunky stuff anymore. Yeah. It was great. I just had to throw it in there when you mentioned your monitors there and how small they were. I was just like, oh, that is just great. That's great. So when you're getting ready to do a recording session, typically, how do you prepare for it?
How would I prepare as an engineer?
Yeah.
So a lot of this comes back to what you and I were talking about in terms of preparing the client for the session too.
Mm-hmm.
So, so often coming into the space, a musician, unless they're, seasoned pro and already know how it works, there's a lot of questions about, how things will work. And so what usually is best to do is to take a look specifically at the music. Right. To see what exactly you need to do and to come up with as best as you can, because it's totally a subjective experience as to what might result in the best outcomes. And sometimes you surprise yourself. You may do something out of order and it may actually work out beautifully. That's a really a lot of the fun part of being in the studio is the happy accidents.
Exactly.
But you try to take, especially if it's a traditional arrangement, and figure out the best way to put that together and to make sure that time and attention are paid to developing the best performance, the best connection between the musicians, the best space that the music should be captured in, mm-hmm. and then just getting the best sounds down. And so that is a combination of collaboration with the artist, experience with these things, and then a little bit of experimentation. So, initially when you meet the client and bring them into the space to record, you try to do some discussion about the best way for things to happen. And then you don't want to strangle the project to death by scheduling things and making plans, because some organic development and a little bit of flexibility can lead to a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just creating enough of a basic outline so that you're cognizant of where quality needs to be focused, where any insufficiencies or opportunities to improve the process should be paid attention to, but then kind of allowing some spontaneity to see what you end up with. So that's pretty typical, where you would maybe figure out if the drums are the best place to start, or maybe there's a core instrument like a piano melody that drives the song, and you put that down and begin to build around it. And what's so great about recording now is you can always go back and replace something. So even if you initially start with something that doesn't work, after you put the song together, you may end up with a totally different result than you expected, and you go back and you re-record that original piano part, and it takes on a new life of its own. So it's really fun to allow the process to kind of organically move itself forward.
Yeah, that works. So are your clients primarily singers? I got a lot of information off of your website, which I'll post the link to in the show notes. But singers, voiceover folks, filmmakers, because you said that your work primarily takes you with film and post-production.
Yeah. And so this is the great LA networking discussion that we're about to have here. Right place, right time. That's always what they say about this business.
Yeah.
And so that really, my clientele and my success has been really based on that, just being, in the right place at the right time for those opportunities to come along. So when I was early in my career in LA and spending time in studios, naturally there were a lot of musicians reaching out to me, and you were connecting with musicians. And so there were always new opportunities to mix music or produce people or record or help songwrite. And then moving into post-production, you begin to connect more with other mixers and clients. And so then you start mixing small budget films and personal films. And that eventually leads into doing commercial work, which as an engineer is one of the most profitable things you can do. Besides doing corporate live sound, it's a very profitable job.
Yeah, it is.
Getting to mix sound for commercials is very lucrative. There's a lot of money spent on that. And so that eventually led into commercial work. And then from commercial work, you began to meet some of the people who are involved in that. And so now part of my clientele roster are voiceover artists as well, because what happened, and this is kind of unexpected, is, they record voiceover for a commercial spot. I mix it. They find out who mixed it, and then they reach out to me and they're like, I love the way my voiceover sounded in this spot. I'd really like to be able to deliver out the voiceover to all of my clients this way. And now I'm designing custom recording setups and mix chains for voiceover artists as well.
Cool.
And so it's really fun, in this town being an audio engineer, because you can work in live sound, you can work in music recording, you can work in post-production, you can consult on acoustics, you can, help with home equipment, professional equipment. There's so many ways that you can consult and pick up clientele. And so, from kind of year to year, things shift and change.
Well, if you ever need a drop, let me know. I'll be more than happy to come in and put one down for you.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, that would be great. Actually, we'll follow up after the show here, I think.
All right, that goes without saying.
It's on the record. It's on the record.
It's on the record. It's on the record. So any clients that may have been of a challenge, and how would you go about dealing with maybe somebody who, and again, the show is geared toward indie artists, especially the ones coming out, someone who has natural talent, can, for example, sing their butt off, but has never really done anything, but has been encouraged by someone to do something? What would you do with a person like that?
That's a really good question.
I come up with them every once in a while.
So and we'll put this in the context of a singer who's coming into a studio with the hopes of, getting a great recording done.
Exactly.
So a lot of that really depends on the attitude of the person. And I think that's pretty obvious. If I get a wonderful singer who doesn't have a lot of experience and they come in with humility, then there is a lot of trust there. And so we can work openly and kind of communicate easily about how we're going to get that done and kind of be frank about it. But it's the difficult situations, that we want to talk about here. Mm-hmm. So and this was a hard lesson for me to learn. I always wanted to fight rather than be supportive. I would have clients who'd come into the studio and I'd be like, who do these people think they are telling me, what they want? And I understand they're paying customers, but, I'm the expert and I know how to do all of this and they should shut up and listen to me. And, I realized all that did was break down the session. And I really had to learn to put my ego aside. And sometimes, even personally, I would despise these people, just could not stand them and would have nothing to do with them if there wasn't a professional relationship here. Yeah. But for the integrity of the craft, for the commitment of the clients and providing excellent customer service, I learned to use my ego to my advantage. Mm-hmm. And so all I needed to do was think about how do you get somebody who is a difficult personality to work with you. And I realized that was through support and praise. Mm-hmm. So, if they didn't want to be forthright or easy about getting done what we needed to do, then I could begin to appeal to their vanity, mm-hmm. to their intentions and their hopes, and really began to inspire an emotional experience of recording. Either it was celebrating small victories or really building up, good feelings about successes as we were making progress. And pretty soon you would see that individuals make a pretty drastic change in their personality from being tough, from needing to feel secure, really being in charge in that situation, to being much more interested in collaborating and feeling really good. And, the dopamine and serotonin kick in and all of a sudden they're a joy to work with. And then the collaboration starts and then they're willing to work. And so I came in with good technical knowledge and a good education about how to be an engineer, and found out that I really needed to get my butt kicked to take, to put my ego aside and think more psychologically about how to help clients achieve success. And sometimes that meant, crawling inside their skin and appealing to them in a way that was going to work, even if it was against my every nature.
Deep.
Well, you hear, if you've had engineers on the show before, that they talk about how 80% of their job is being a psychologist.
Yeah. I've had a couple of friends of mine who are engineers on the initial episodes, and one of the things that it is most difficult, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a knock against you guys, but when you go into a recording session especially, or even if you're doing a live performance, you got to put your ego aside. I remember when Quincy Jones was doing We Are the World with Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
He had over the door, the entrance, a big sign that said to everybody, check your ego at the door. That way you can get the session done quickly and efficiently and still come out with quality products. Yeah, you had the greatest of the greats all singing, but not all of them who are lead singers can sing the lead parts. It was already designated. Most of you guys are in the choir. Mike's doing a lead. Lionel Richie's doing a lead, and so forth and so on. And that's it. Everybody else is in the choir, so please check your egos at the door. So, folks, I'm saying that when you're on stage, when you're in the studio, listen to what your engineer has to say. Listen to what your producers have to say. They can definitely help you get along and get through the session. Be willing to take the direction, and that's about it. That's about all I can say. Just be open-minded. It'll work both ways. It'll work both ways. You'll come out with a high-quality product, and if you deal with Nick, you're definitely going to get a high-quality product. The man knows what he's doing. Trust me.
Thanks, Will.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I'm just going to jump around real quick. Let's go back to your instruments. You play a standard set as well, don't you?
I do, and unfortunately, a lot of my musical instruments have been dispensed with because they just didn't get use, and I'm not playing anymore. Mostly focused on singing, and that instrument packs up pretty easily and travels with me.
Right.
So percussion. I don't have a drum set anymore, and just a few percussion, like some shakers and stuff that I have around to do a little bit of producing here and there.
Right. If you were to go into a studio and somebody said, Nick, I know you know what you're doing behind the board, but I want you to play drums because I remember when you did such and such and so, and I really liked what you did. If you had a preference for a set, what would it be?
It would be a Pearl Maple Masterworks kit, a 5-piece black lacquer shells with Evans EC2 heads.
So are you a Zildjian guy? Pasty cymbals? What's your preference on those?
I would have some Zildjian A customs, probably on the crash and hats, and then some Sabian AAX on my right side on the large crash and the ride.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show is all about gigs, gear, and info. Take down product numbers, names. We're just trying to help you out here. That's about it.
You'll sound great. It'll be a big sound. It'll sing, man. That kid'll sing.
Yeah. Hey, just to jump back on what you were saying about equipment and such, and I'm paraphrasing here about outboard gear, the types that were used and everything else, and how you can go into a place like Sam Asher Guitar Center and just get caught up like a kid in a candy store and come out with more stuff than what you need. Personally, my setup is pretty simple. I've got an Apple MacBook. I'm using a Behringer 4-channel audio interface. Specifically, I've got the Euphoria UMC 404 HD. We're doing this podcast via phone, FaceTime audio, and I'm using an iRig Pre to capture Nick's signal. My mic, I'm using a Rode NT1A. Here's a funny thing. As you know, Nick, the Rode NT1A is primarily a singer's mic. So I was doing just a little test on it. I was going to do some singing of my own on a tune that I was coming up with. And so I did the complimentary test 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And I just listened. I was like, oh my God, this thing sounds just as good singing as it does speaking. So much so I bought a second one. So that's the simple version of it. I use the plugins, my DAW, my digital audio workstation. I'm still on Logic 9. I'm using the Express model. I also have the Pro model on the desktop, but that's pretty much it. I don't do really much anything else, and I'm running the whole thing into a Behringer Xenix 8-channel mixer, and that's it. So you can get a lot of bang for your buck, as Nick said earlier. If you know what you're looking for, you do your research, and you know what it is you exactly need. Just because it's got a lot of buttons and a lot of lights and a lot of dials and switches and things does not necessarily mean you need that. Take a look at what your project is, whether it's live or in studio, and then take it from there. Do you really need to have that particular plug-in? Do you really need that particular outboard gear? Because if you're in a live situation, I can tell you this much. You got to go to the club, for example. You've got maybe 30 minutes to set up before the show. You don't want to spend an hour setting up for a show when you've only got 30 minutes, because then you just killed off time and you've probably irritated the club owner and you won't get called back. So take a look at what you're doing, folks, before you get up on the stage, before you get in the studio. See what it is you really need and take it from there.
And if you ever have questions, find a professional. A simple email will help get you exactly what you need, and you'll be more knowledgeable and more confident going into the situation.
Exactly. So got a couple of last ones here. I'm about to just wrap it up here for Music Outlook LA, gigs, gear, and info. Nick, do you have any advice you'd like to share with the upcoming indie artists or others that might already be in the industry?
Yeah, I'd like to jump back, Will, to something that we were talking about, which was your experience coming into Blue Road with Nicole and working on that first record, which is that you guys, you recognized Nicole's talent. You knew that you had a concept, that you had a vision that you wanted to do. And even though there wasn't a lot of experience or precedence for what you were going to do, you just went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think, this is really, over the history of music and art's, really been something that's been proven time and time again, which is that you really don't need experience to make art. And what you really need is purpose, and you need desire. And I really love that you guys went forward with that project, made something beautiful with not exactly sure how it might come out. And I really, from an artist perspective, from my own experience, I had a lot of influences and a lot of teachers who always said, you're not ready. You need to do this, or you need to know this. And, and you just can't do that. And it took me years and years of my life to shake that off, and to learn what was actually preventing me from accomplishing my goals in my artistic career was myself. And I really, really want to stress that to anybody, any age, who's having any anxiety about going forward and trying a project. Which is you just, the way you get a project done is to start on it. And even if it's something that you're terrified of or have never done before, you really just have to go and do it. And sometimes that lack of knowledge, that lack of experience can actually be what defines your success.
Yeah.
And, there's dozens of examples of wonderful painters who've gone forward without any formal training and made these masterpieces just because they set themselves to it. And out of them came what naturally exists, and without any influence, without any shaping, without any inhibitions. And so I really just want to encourage artists out there of any age, or even those who are considering technical trades like what I do, to just go. Just do it.
Like that famous shoe. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. That's all you got to do.
That's right.
Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
There it is.
There you go. So, Nick, how can people reach out to you if they want to get a project going, recorded, mastered, what have you?
Well, thanks for plugging me here, Will. The best way to reach me is by email or phone. I don't have much in the way of social media right now because not a lot to promote since most of what I'm doing is under NDA. So you can find me by email at nick@recordwithnick.com. Again, that's Nick, Nick, at recordwithnick.com, all one word. And you can reach me by phone as well. Will, are we posting up that after on the show notes?
Yep, I'll be putting that up all in the show notes.
All right, great. So he'll put my phone number there too. So I'd love to hear from you, even if you just want to do a general inquiry about some questions you have. Rates are very affordable. Happy to just do a little bit of consulting if you just want to chat as well. And always free to meet up for coffee. So let me know.
There you go. Again, check out the website, recordwithnick.com. There you'll find everything you need to reach out to Nick. And finally, Nick, I ask this one last question of all of my guests. What's in your car? In other words, what do you listen to when, for example, you are stuck in LA traffic or that you're just out and about?
My very favorite thing about music is the ability to emotionally transport me.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a folk duo who is doing beautiful new things with very simple arrangements and really lovely lyrical poetry out of Austin, Texas. And their name is Penny and Sparrow.
Mm-hmm.
They've been making music for about 10 years, and they just put out a new record last year called Finch, like the bird.
Right.
And when I'm sitting in LA traffic, worried about the 9 deadlines I have and the clients who are mad at me,
right.
Penny and Sparrow's new record Finch just helps me be happy, helps carry me away.
I have to find my happy place.
It's with Penny and Sparrow. That's where it is, Will.
All right. Cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this episode of Music Outlook LA, Gigs, Gear, and Info. Thanks again to my guest, Mr. Nick Price. Be sure to check out the show notes for his website and contact info. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast here at Spreaker.com. That's Spreaker.com. Music Outlook LA is also available on Apple Podcasts, the old school iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, CastBox, the TuneIn Radio app, and Listen Notes, the podcast search engine. I'm Will Kimzee, a.k.a. WK Music. Peace! This podcast is both brought to you and produced by Kimzee Entertainment, LLC. Music Outlook LA is a copyrighted broadcast of Kimzee Entertainment, LLC. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Will Kimzee or Kimzee Entertainment, LLC. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or any other use of this product without the express written consent of Kimzee Entertainment, LLC is strictly prohibited.